Let's talk about this bad boy. Gucci Guilty Love Edition, Pour Homme. I think one of the most universal, unisex, flawless aspects of perfumery is when you make a composition with simplicity, yet it's very effective. And some of the most popular notes that are effective in handling that job is white florals and musk and some level of sweetness, whether that be over the top, dead ringer, or underrepresented. Musk and white florals almost never fails at being just a great versatile unisex composition in fragrance. This one is no exception. The bad news is you've already smelled this before. But the good news is it's still amazing. Very simple composition here. White florals and musk, essentially. Composition: Juniper, orange blossom, and Ambrofix, which is basically just a medley of ISOE super, some kind of compound, Ambro D or something like that. It's a compound that adds to projection and longevity. I don't really know stylistically how it changes the scent profile, but we know ISOE super is in just about everything. Again, this is all about white florals. You get a lot of texture with this fragrance though. So even though when you're dealing with white florals, you're dealing with clean, fresh, sweet, angelic florals, what separates one from another in perfumery to me is the texture. You hear me talk a lot about dimensionality in fragrance: 1D, 2D, 3-dimension, 4-dimension. And it's just kind of this loose, strained concept I've come up with in my mind to basically describe how fragrances can affect the senses and how certain fragrances affect a limited amount of senses, whereas others are multi-dimensional in terms of how they have executed the scent profile. And what that evokes in a fragrance is a sense of depth or simplicity, a sense of space and time, the ability to transport you somewhere else or to ignite something within you that wasn't there previously. All of these are almost like unlocking different parts of the senses. Now, that's not to say that a fragrance that is 4D is better than a fragrance that's one-dimensional, but this is just a way I think through fragrances. And normally when I'm dealing with simple or complex fragrances, my typical go-to desire is that if it's a simple fragrance, I think what separates simple fragrances from one another is with the limited use of dimension that they're bringing to a fragrance, what are they doing differently from other fragrances in terms of space and texture and air and things like that to separate themselves from one another. Because I do believe you can still be complex within a simple composition. And when I'm dealing with a complex scent, I'm also thinking through what are the different tools they utilized to create that complexity and how is balance, harmony, and unity achieved within the scent. Or maybe you have a scent that's disruptive, but appropriately disruptive in its complexity. All of those things are how I navigate dimensionality in fragrances. Now again, top notes: Juniper, which kind of adds this green aromatic freshness. But again, this is all about white floral angelic sweetness injected with loads of musk. And the dimensionality comes into play in terms of how they treated that. The level of sweetness is dead perfect. It is not too sweet. It is not underrepresented in its sweetness at all. I consider it about a 5 out of 10 in sweetness, which for me is really nice. I find that the older I get, There's certain exceptions I'll make with sweetness, but generally my sweet spot, no pun intended, is middle of the road sweetness, where whenever sweetness is the star role of a fragrance, typically I don't enjoy that. I like sweetness to just be one aspect of a fragrance, and they've dialed it in dead perfect. Also, the aromatic nature of what's going on with the musk and the ISOE Super, which typically can evoke musk-like qualities or floral qualities. ISOE Super and Ambrofix are known to have different characteristics based off of its composition. I don't know much about the details of that. All I know is that in this fragrance, I get a very musky, airy, aromatic quality to this very slightly above natural, sweet white flower composition. This is what would happen if you wanted a heavenly white floral glorified skin scent and then times that by 2. So this would be an amazing skin scent on the dry down when it's got low projection and it's kind of ran out of steam. But for the time being, within about a 4 to 6 hour period, the airy angelic nature of the aromatic floral here pops off of skin, in my opinion, up to 3 to 5 feet, depending on how heavy you spray. On the test strip, I mean, this imitates a lot of your typical fragrances to me. At the niche level, you have fragrances like Musk Therapy, which this closely resembles. Not as complex, but definitely more projective and still accomplishes the same vibe, which is this serene, peaceful, inviting, angelic sweetness. It almost feels like a sweet cloud. Like an actual, if you could touch and taste a cloud, it would just be this airy, light floral sweetness. And that's what I get here. Whereas Musk Therapy is a little bit sweeter, but a much richer, deeper depth in the background. On the designer level, you have things like Drake's Summer Mink. This very closely imitates that. Gucci Guilty Elixir. This is definitely, I don't know which came out first, but this is definitely either a follow-up or a build upon to that DNA style. It smells quite similar to Gucci Guilty Elixir, maybe a little bit sweeter, a slightly different aromatic tint to it, but it's also like that fragrance as well. On skin, I get much of the same thing, but what's beautiful is I feel like on the test strip, it's all about this floral puffy cloud sweetness with musk, whereas on skin, I start to see the juniper kind of pop its head out and the fragrance takes on a bit of green leafiness. Yeah, the juniper really climbs out much more. Like I would say it almost felt non-existent on the test strip, but on skin, it comes alive by about 25% in the fragrance. So that's a facet of the musky floral composition that gives it a lot of character, because this has a aromatic greenness to it that still makes the musk cloudy sweetness a priority, but the supporting role of the juniper is not way in the background. It's right behind it, just kind of framing this musky white floral sweetness. And there you go. There you have it. Musky white floral. The texture is airy, aromatic, slightly green, fluffy. I don't want to say powdery, but it has a fluffiness to it where it has some density to add to the projection, and it just kind of pops. It has this 3 to 5 foot projective pop, a tiny little bit of 2 to 3 foot sillage. And that is really nice, because you would think with a scent like this, it would become a skin scent very quickly. But again, I find that 4 to 6 hours for me, this kind of jumps off skin. You know, it plays within maybe 4 or 5 feet, dials down to about you kind of lose a projection, a little bit of projection on each hour. But even as it comes down close to skin, it is just so cozy, easy on the nose, feels natural, doesn't feel synthetic. And again, it's just that effortless, angelic, inviting coziness that I think both men and women can appreciate. For women, it's just this fresh, angelic quality to it, this airy on a cloudness. For ladies who are into the Ariana Grandes and the Billie Eilish, a lot of those fragrances imitate this very same thing, but I think Gucci really nailed the quality here. And for men, I think the Gucci Guilty Elixir, the Initio Musk Therapy is pretty much exactly what this is, with the slight subtlety of this kind of green leafy juniper that's very aromatic. And on my skin, it just evokes this very natural, non-synthetic green lift that has a ton of personality, unlike Musk Therapy and Gucci Guilty Elixir. As a fragrance, honestly, I give this probably a 9. It's not the most unique, but it checks the boxes in terms of performance. I would call this moderate performance. Unless you super oversprayed, you might be able to get closer to that 8 hours. But at least bare minimum moderate performance. It's a super versatile smell. It is a inviting, wow, he's fresh type of composition. And again, in terms of a man wearing it, women love when men smell fresh first and foremost. And after the fresh, clean, out of the shower freshness, a little bit of inviting sweetness and character is what comes next. Now, that's not to say that overly masculine fragrances aren't just as inviting to a woman, but in terms of something that they're familiar with yet takes on a new personality on a man, this is definitely has a very understandable language for the opposite sex to really enjoy. 9 out of 10 for me. Performance, versatility. I feel like even in its category, it's slightly unique with the green facet, and I'm so glad that it did, because typically the green wouldn't even be there, and there would be like an extra emphasis on sweetness by about like 6 or 7 out of 10 level sweet. I've even seen fragrances like this go up to like what feels like 8 out of 10 level sweetness. So this is dialed down dead perfect to just be extremely versatile. It's about as versatile as something like, a Valentino Uomo type of scent, something that's just fresh but has personality. Valentino Uomo, due to the iris nature, feels like it could lean more into intimate or date night, setting. This could certainly rock out at a date night, but it's not a flirtatious scent. It's not a scent that is, romantic at all, but it is alluring. So that's the aspect of it where I feel like you could take it into the date setting if you wanted, but it's kind of dipping your foot in the water of intimacy. To me, this is just an everyday casual scent that feels rich and upscale just due to the quality and the balance. Had the quality and balance not been there, I would have thought it felt very much like a generic, almost like the Baccarat Rouge of this style, where it's like it's so familiar to everybody. All the fragrances are like it, but I really think the green nuance is what separates it apart here. I think it's a fall-winter wear, but due to the amounts of freshness, as long as you have a slight breeze and you're not in high heat or super cold weather or rainy weather, I think this fragrance is easily year-round. It's dumb reach for me, but what I like about this dumb reach is it still feels a little bit fancy. It feels a step above casual. And I would want to re-spritz this later in the day just to get that fresh opening. That opening is so airy and cloud-like and puffy that it's unforgettable. I don't think this style will ever get old, but I would like to see more houses play with the little intricacies of what's going on behind floral musk styles. And so I'm happy to see things like this reappear on the market, but it's a 9 out of 10 for me. You can get this fragrance around the $100-ish price point, up or down. Alternatives to this would be any of the fragrances I named before, but I do think that if you paid for this fragrance, it would be money well spent because you would wear this fragrance all the time. Both men and women, I see this could just be such a daily driver that you enjoy. You catch a lot of wafts of a fragrance like this, and it's also the type of scent that dries down into a beautiful glorified skin scent that's just slightly musky, maybe a little bit powdery and sweet. And so it's a cozy bed pillow type of scent to dry down into. So you fall asleep with this fragrance, you would not be upset. But yeah, this is Gucci Guilty Love Edition pour Homme. That means for men. And they do have one for women, which I'm excited to try, but I'm sure it's very close to this, maybe with some other nuance. Hopefully we get a sample of that in and we'll talk about it as well. But I feel like this is such a Swiss Army type of composition in a set, both for the fact that women and men really enjoy it, and there's so much untapped potential with its nuances. Now, one last thing I'll say before we head out here is I think men are intimidated by florals, and rightfully so, due to their kind of cultural appropriation to being feminine, but also because a lot of florals have distinct qualities and character to their scent profile that are off-putting to men. They lack growl, they lack firmness. They're all very kind of sweet, overly pronounced, and take over a fragrance. And it's not the type of notes you want to take over a fragrance. In this case, I feel white florals are truly perfectly unisex, and it's what you do with them that make it lean masculine or feminine. Here, simply musk, and I even think you might be able to argue a case that the sweetness and musk make it lean feminine, but the juniper, which is aromatic and found in many fougères, is counterbalancing that to lean more masculine. So with both of that juxtaposition, you have a perfectly unisex fragrance. Definitely check it out, Gucci Guilty Love Edition, and this is a banger.